Marcus Webb stood in a hospital corridor at 2 a.m, watching a man scream at a photograph of his dead wife, a woman he could no longer remember. The doctor who calmed him wore an immaculate suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. When he passed Marcus, the air smelled sweet, rotten, like something feeding. Marcus didn't know it yet, but in 3 weeks, he joined that doctor's grief support group, and he'd discover that healing can be worse than suffering, because some things that take your pain away take everything else with it. Marcus Webb stood in the hospital corridor at 2 a.m, watching a man scream at a photograph. The man was older, maybe 60, with trembling hands that clutched a phone showing a woman's face. He kept looking at the screen, then away, then back again, his confusion spiraling into panic. Hospital security had been called 10 minutes ago. They stood nearby, unsure whether to intervene or wait. "I know this is my wife," the man kept saying, his voice raw. "I know she just died, but I don't remember her voice. I can't hear it anymore." Marcus felt something cold slide down his spine. He'd come to the hospital because his sister worked nights in the ICU and he couldn't sleep at home, couldn't bear the silence. But this man's horror felt familiar in a way that made Marcus's chest tighten. A doctor approached, tall, pale, wearing an immaculate suit that seemed too formal for the fluorescent buzz of a hospital corridor. His eyes were dark, almost black, even under the harsh lighting. He spoke quietly to the man, his voice too low for Marcus to hear, and within moments the screaming stopped. His shoulders sagged, his hands relaxed, the phone slipped into his pocket. The man walked away looking calm, empty but calm. Marcus watched the doctor turn and glance in his direction. Their eyes met for half a second, and Marcus felt an inexplicable urge to run. He forced himself to stay still, to nod politely, but the doctor's smile lingered too long, kind but distant, like someone mimicking an emotion they'd only read about. The doctor moved past him toward the exit, and Marcus caught a smell in the air, sweet, rotten, like fruit left out in the sun. He didn't know why, but he pulled out his phone and took a photo of the man's business card lying on the nearby chairs. Dr. Harrison Calder, grief counseling and bereavement support. And below that, an address in the medical district. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself standing outside that same address. He told himself he wasn't really going to go in. He'd just been walking, needed air, needed to get away from the apartment where every room still echoed with absence. His sister had stopped asking if he was okay. She knew he wasn't. Instead, she left pamphlets on the kitchen counter, support groups, therapy options, hotlines he'd never call. The building was glass and steel, designed to feel clean and modern, neutral colors, soft edges, the kind of place meant to be inoffensive, comforting, without personality. Marcus stared at the directory in the lobby until his vision blurred. 4th floor, bereavement services. He took the elevator up before he could change his mind. The therapy room was too perfect. White walls that seemed freshly painted, soft gray carpet with no stains, no wear patterns, a circle of identical chairs, ergonomic and expensive looking. No windows. The air was temperature controlled, sterile and faintly sweet. 6 people sat in the circle, all looking hollow in the same way. Marcus recognized the expression. He saw it in the mirror every morning. Dr. Calder stood at the far end of the room, and something about him made Marcus's skin crawl. It wasn't anything obvious. The man was professional, calm, perfectly composed, but there was a wrongness to him, like a picture that's almost right, but one small detail is tilted, throwing everything off balance. "Welcome," Dr. Calder said, his voice smooth and warm. "This is a space for shared grief. Nothing leaves this room but healing." Marcus sat down in the only empty chair between a woman who stared at her hands and a man who kept blinking rapidly, as if trying to clear his vision. The introductions began: names, ages, how their children died. Car accident, cancer, suicide, drowning. One boy fell through ice while skating. One girl choked on food at a birthday party. Different stories, different details, but every parent had the same hollow eyes, the same slumped posture, the same way of speaking about their children, past tense, quiet voice, words that caught in their throats. When it was Marcus's turn, he couldn't speak. His throat closed up. The image of his daughter flooded his mind. Lily, 7 years old, pink dress, gap-toothed smile, smeared birthday cake on her cheek. And then the other image, the one that never left. The street, the bike, the sound of metal crumpling, the silence that followed. "I'm Marcus," he finally managed. "My daughter died last year." That was all he could say. His hands were shaking. Dr. Calder was watching him, closely, intensely, like a predator that had just caught the scent of blood. "Thank you for sharing, Marcus," Dr. Calder said softly. "Grief takes courage." The session continued. People cried, told stories, described the last moments they'd had with their children. Dr. Calder listened without interrupting, without writing notes, just staring with those dark, unblinking eyes. Sometimes the light seemed to reflect strangely in a windowless room. When the session ended an hour later, Marcus felt something unexpected. Relief. Not emotional relief exactly, physical, like a weight had been lifted from his chest. His shoulders felt lighter, his breath came easier. He walked out of the building feeling steadier than he had in months. That night, he slept. Really slept. Dreamless, deep, uninterrupted. When he woke up, he almost felt guilty, as if sleeping meant he was forgetting. But the crushing ache in his chest had lessened just slightly, and for the first time since the accident, Marcus allowed himself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he could survive this. By the third session, everyone noticed the change. "I laughed yesterday," a woman named Erin said, sounding almost ashamed. "My coworker told a stupid joke and I laughed for the first time in 2 years." "I didn't cry today," another father, Michael, said quietly. "I thought about my son and I felt calm, just calm." Around the circle, heads nodded, shoulders seemed less burdened, voices sounded steadier. Dr. Calder sat perfectly still in his chair, hands folded in his lap, watching them with what looked like satisfaction. "Grief is a wound," he said, "and wounds, when properly cared for, can heal." Marcus should have felt relieved. Everyone else seemed grateful, but something nagged at him, a discomfort he couldn't name. Later that night, when he tried to remember Lily's laugh, that bright, unself-conscious giggle she'd make when he tickled her, the sound felt muted, distant, like a recording played through a broken speaker. He told himself it was normal. Memory fades, the brain protects itself. Everyone said so. But the thought kept him awake until dawn. The sessions followed a predictable pattern. They would arrive, sit in the circle, talk about their children, happy memories, painful memories, the moments leading up to the deaths. They would cry sometimes. Other times they'd sit in silence, each person lost in their own private anguish. And Dr. Calder would listen. really listen, not with the performative attention Marcus had seen in other therapists, the kind that comes with nodding and verbal cues and hastily scribbled notes. Dr. Calder gave them complete, unwavering focus. His eyes never left whoever was speaking. He barely blinked. Sometimes his gaze seemed to bore into them, as if he could see through skin and bone into some deeper part of their minds. The room always felt warmer during sessions, the air thicker, harder to breathe, as though something invisible was displacing the oxygen. Marcus noticed that the sweet, rotting smell grew stronger when people cried. After each session, Marcus felt better, lighter, calmer, but also blank, as if someone had erased a small part of him and filled the space with nothing. He stopped dreaming about Lily entirely. Before the sessions, his nights had been full of her. Nightmares of the accident, yes, but also dreams where she was alive, running through their old house, calling for him. Now his sleep was empty. When he woke, he felt rested, but somehow less. Her face in his mind was losing detail. The exact shape of her nose, the exact shade of her eyes. Had they been more blue or more gray? The way her hair fell when she turned her head. These small things began slipping away, and every time Marcus tried to hold on to them, they blurred further. At first, he thought it was normal, time passing, memory fading the way memories always do, until he overheard two parents whispering in the hallway after the 5th session. "Do you remember what your son looked like?" one asked. Peter, the man who lost a boy to leukemia. The other hesitated. I saw him frown, saw confusion cross his face. Not clearly. I know I have photos at home, but when I close my eyes, I can't quite." Marcus felt cold spread through his body. During the 6th session, Marcus decided to test something. He brought a photo of Lily, the last one taken before the accident, her 8th birthday party, pink dress with white polka dots, missing front tooth, chocolate cake smeared across her cheek because she tried to lick the frosting off the spatula when she thought no one was looking. Her eyes were bright with mischief, her smile wide and unguarded. Marcus stared at the photo for 10 minutes before entering the building. He burned every detail into his mind, the exact curve of her smile, the tiny scar on her chin when she'd fallen off the swings at age 4, the way her left ear stuck out just slightly more than her right. Inside the therapy room, Dr. Calder's eyes immediately found the photo in Marcus's hand. "Oh," he said softly, and something in his voice made Marcus's skin prickle. "She's beautiful." Marcus watched him carefully. His gaze lingered on the photograph for a few seconds longer than felt natural. His expression didn't change, still that same calm, professional sympathy. But Marcus saw something shift behind his eyes. A hunger, maybe, or recognition. The session began. People talked. Marcus barely heard them. He kept the photo in his lap, occasionally looking down to check that it was still there, still clear, still real. When it was his turn to speak, Dr. Calder leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about the moment you lost her, Marcus." The air in the room seemed to thicken. Marcus felt his throat tighten, felt the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. And then he felt something else, something physical, a sensation like fingers reaching into his chest, not violent, not painful, gentle almost, like someone carefully extracting something delicate inside his ribs. A pulling sensation, slow and deliberate, tugging at something deep inside him. Dr. Calder inhaled slowly, deeply, his eyes half closed. Marcus's vision blurred. The edges of the room seemed to soften, the white walls becoming indistinct. The smell, sweet, rotten, overwhelming, filled his nose and throat. After each session, Marcus felt better, lighter, calmer, but also blank, as if someone had erased a small part of him and filled the space with nothing. That night, Marcus panicked. He sat on his bedroom floor, surrounded by every photo of Lily he owned. School pictures, candid shots, videos on his phone, drawings she'd made that he'd saved. Her favorite stuffed rabbit, worn from years of being dragged everywhere. He tried to remember her voice, her exact voice, the pitch, the cadence, the way she'd drag out the word data when she wanted something. He couldn't. He could remember facts. She liked strawberries. She hated math homework. She wanted to be an astronaut. She was afraid of thunderstorms but loved the rain. But the feeling was fading. The emotional weight of those memories was being drained away, leaving only cold information behind. Marcus realized something horrifying. Grief wasn't just pain. It was the anchor that kept memories alive, the emotional connection that gave meaning to the past. Without it, memory became nothing more than data, names, dates, facts with no soul behind them. And Dr. Calder was eating it, taking it, consuming the very thing that kept their children real. Marcus looked at his hands. They were shaking. His chest felt tight with a fear that was rapidly being replaced by that same empty calm he'd felt after every session. He had to know for sure. Marcus started watching the other parents. Not obviously. He'd arrive early to sessions, linger in the hallway afterward, follow them to their cars. He told himself he was being paranoid, that grief was making him see patterns that didn't exist, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Peter, the man who'd lost his son to leukemia, was the first clear sign. Marcus had overheard him during the second session, talking about his son Tommy with such painful specificity. Tommy's obsession with dinosaurs, how he'd memorized the names of 50 different species before age 6, the way he'd organize his toy collection by time period, his dream of becoming a paleontologist, a dream that died with him at age 9. Now, 7 sessions in, Peter sat in the circle looking calm, too calm. When Dr. Calder asked him to share a memory, Peter frowned slightly. I remember he liked dinosaurs, he said slowly, as if searching for the words. I think there were toys. I must have bought him toys. The specificity was gone. The emotional texture had been scraped away, leaving only vague impressions. Dr. Calder nodded approvingly. The acute pain is fading. That's healthy progress. But Marcus saw the confusion in Peter's eyes. The man knew something was missing. He just couldn't remember what. By the 9th session, Erin had stopped coming. Marcus found her by accident at a grocery store 3 blocks from his apartment. She was in the produce section, calmly selecting apples, humming softly to herself. She looked fine, better than fine, relaxed, content. Her posture was easy, her expression peaceful. Marcus approached carefully. Erin? Hey, I haven't seen you at group. She turned, smiled politely. Oh, hi. I'm sorry, do I know you? From Dr. Calder's sessions, the grief support group? Her smile faltered, confusion crossing her face. Grief support? I don't think I've been to anything like that. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You've been coming for 3 months. Your daughter, Sophie, she drowned at summer camp. Erin stared at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head slowly, still smiling, but now with a hint of concern, as if Marcus might be mentally unstable. I don't have a daughter. I think you've confused me with someone else. You cried about her every single session, Marcus insisted, hearing the desperation in his own voice. You talked about how she loved swimming, how the irony of it killed you. You said, I'm sorry, Erin interrupted gently. "I really don't know what you're talking about. I should go." She walked away, pushing her cart at an unhurried pace, completely unbothered, not sad, not defensive, not guilty, just empty. Marcus stood frozen in the produce aisle, watching her disappear around a corner. Other shoppers moved past him, their carts bumping his legs, but he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Erin didn't remember her daughter. Not just the details, the entire fact of Sophie's existence had been erased from her mind. Marcus went home and tore his apartment apart. Every photograph of Lily, every drawing she'd made in crayon, lopsided houses, stick figure families, a pink cat that was supposed to be realistic, every toy he'd saved, her backpack still hanging by the door, her toothbrush in the bathroom, dried out but preserved, voice messages on his phone that he'd never deleted, afraid of losing even those small digital pieces of her. He spread everything across the floor and tried to force himself to remember. Her 7th birthday party just before the accident. She'd wanted a space theme, black tablecloths covered in silver stars, a rocket ship cake that Marcus had spent 4 hours decorating while she helped by eating frosting straight from the bowl. She'd worn a silver crown and declared herself Princess of Mars. Marcus could still remember those facts, but when he tried to feel the memory, the joy, the exhaustion, the love, it felt muted, distant, like watching someone else's home video. Her face was becoming a blur. Sometimes he looked at photographs and didn't immediately recognize her, had to spend several seconds reorienting himself, reminding himself, this is Lily, this is my daughter, she existed, she was real. The pain was fading too, the unbearable crushing weight in his chest that had made it hard to breathe for months. That was shrinking, and with it, Lily was fading, dissolving, becoming nothing more than a collection of facts with no emotional anchor. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes and forced himself to remember the accident, the street, the bike. She'd been riding without training wheels for the first time, so proud of herself, laughing as she pedaled faster. Marcus had been watching from the front yard, phone in hand to record the moment. The car came around the corner too fast. The driver didn't see her until it was too late. The sound, metal on metal, a sickening crunch that Marcus would never unhear. The silence that followed, the way time seemed to stop, the world holding its breath before the screaming began. Marcus forced himself to remember every detail, to feel the full horror of it. The pain slammed into him like a physical blow, sharp, overwhelming, agonizing. His chest constricted, his hands shook, tears burned his eyes. But Lily came back, sharp, clear, real, her voice echoing in his mind. "Look, Dada, I'm doing it!" The pain was the key. Without it, she disappeared. Marcus realized he had to stay broken, had to keep reopening the wound, because if he healed, if he let Dr. Calder take all the pain away, Lily would disappear completely, and that would be the real death. Marcus began researching. Not medical journals or psychology texts, those wouldn't help. This wasn't science, it was something older, something that didn't fit into neat diagnostic categories. He searched folklore, mythology, urban legends, creatures that fed on emotion, on memory, on loss. There were dozens of them across different cultures, grief demons in Japanese folklore, memory eaters in Celtic mythology, shadow beings in African oral traditions. One name kept appearing, the grief eater, a parasitic entity that consumed human sorrow the way animals consumed prey. But the descriptions varied. Some said it was malevolent, deliberately destroying lives. Others said it was neutral, even beneficial, a natural pressure valve that prevented emotional overload from driving humans to madness or suicide. The stories all agreed on one thing. Grief wasn't just pain. It was identity. It was the emotional glue that kept love attached to memory. When grief was consumed, love decayed. Memory lost meaning. People didn't heal. They became hollow. Marcus read until his eyes burned, until the words blurred together. Outside his window, the sky shifted from black to gray to pale blue. Morning came. He hadn't slept. He knew what he had to do. Marcus broke into the building at midnight on a Tuesday. It wasn't difficult. Security was minimal, a single camera in the lobby that he avoided by entering through the maintenance door in the back alley. The lock was old, easily picked with a credit card and patience. The building was dark and silent. Marcus took the stairs to the 4th floor, his heartbeat loud in his ears, his hands slick with sweat. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to leave, to forget this insane plan. But if he forgot, Lily would be gone forever. The therapy room door was unlocked. Marcus pushed it open slowly, expecting darkness. Instead, he found dim light, sourceless, ambient, as if the walls themselves were glowing faintly. The room felt alive. The air was warm and humid, like being inside a mouth. It pulsed slightly rhythmically, as if breathing. Marcus took a step inside, and the door swung shut behind him with a soft click. The white walls were no longer white. They were pink, fleshy, organic. Marcus stumbled backwards, his shoulder hitting the door. The walls weren't just colored pink. They were made of flesh, veined, slightly moist, expanding and contracting with each breath. The gray carpet was muscle tissue, striated fibers twitching beneath his feet. The chairs were ribs, curved and white, arranged in a perfect circle. The ceiling wasn't drywall. It was a throat. And above, barely visible in the dim light, Marcus saw movement, something slithering, something watching. He tried the door, locked. The room spoke. Not with words, with sensation, a pressure against his mind, a presence pushing into his consciousness, filling his head with images and feelings that weren't his own. Hunger. Not for food, for something else, something intangible. The room wanted to consume, needed to consume, and Marcus could feel its frustration, its endless appetite that was never quite satisfied. The lights flickered on, harsh and fluorescent. Dr. Calder stood in the doorway, except it wasn't Dr. Calder anymore. His body elongated, stretching upward until he was nearly 8 feet tall. His skin peeled away like paper, revealing something underneath, something black and formless, constantly shifting, unable to settle into a single shape. Where his face should have been was a void, a darkness so complete it seemed to absorb light. And inside that void, Marcus saw movement. Thousands of images, fragments of memory, children's faces, hospital rooms, funerals, graveyards, parents screaming, photographs dissolving into nothing. All the grief that had been consumed, stored somewhere inside this thing's impossible body. Dr. Calder's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I do not kill, I do not harm, I only relieve. Marcus pressed himself against the door, shaking. You're erasing them! All those children! You're making them disappear! The creature tilted its head, a movement that was almost curious. No, I'm digesting what binds you to pain, freeing you from suffering. That pain is all I have left of my daughter. Marcus's voice cracked, broke. It's the only thing that keeps her real. Dr. Calder moved closer, his form flickering between human and shadow, solid and smoke. I'm sorry you cannot accept my relief, but I must not be present when the end comes. The creature moved towards Marcus. The creature showed him, not with words, but with images, flooding Marcus's mind faster than he could process. He saw the other parents, the ones who had stayed longest, the ones who had completed their healing. Peter, who no longer remembered his son's name, who lived alone in an apartment empty of photographs, of memories, of anything that might trigger emotion. He went to work, came home, ate meals, slept, functioned perfectly. But there was no joy in his life, no sorrow, no love, no fear, just existence. Aaron, who had no daughter, who had no grief, who also had no attachment to anything or anyone. She smiled politely to coworkers but felt nothing for them. She watched movies without emotional response. She ate food without tasting it. She was alive in the biological sense, but dead in every way that mattered. Michael, the father who'd lost a son in a drowning accident. He'd remarried 6 months after completing therapy. His new wife thought he was calm, mature, unflappable. She didn't know he felt nothing for her, that he stayed because it was convenient, that if she died tomorrow, he would feel the same blank indifference he felt about everything. They weren't healing, they were being hollowed out. "You do not heal grief," Dr. Calder said, his voice resonating inside Marcus's skull. "You survive it, and I make survival painless." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "You're turning them into ghosts." "No." The creature's form solidified slightly, becoming more human-shaped, but still fundamentally wrong. "I am turning them into nothing, and nothing cannot suffer." Marcus realized something worse. It was already happening to him. He tried to picture Lily's face, really picture it with all the detail and clarity it once had, but she slipped away. Her eyes were the wrong color. Her smile didn't quite fit. Her voice, when he tried to remember it, was muffled and distorted. He felt panic rising, but it was distant, muted, like fear heard underwater, far away and getting farther. Dr. Calder smiled, the void of his face somehow conveying satisfaction. "You have fed me well, Marcus. You carry more pain than most, deeper, richer. You've sustained me for weeks." Marcus whispered, barely audible, "I don't want to forget her." The creature extended a shadowy limb, reaching toward Marcus's chest. "You don't want to feel this pain anymore. No one does. That's why you came to me." Marcus hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, Lily's face faded further. The exact shade of her hair became uncertain. The sound of her laugh disappeared completely. "So here is your gift, Marcus. One final session, one final feeding. After this, you will be free. No more nightmares, no more guilt, no more crushing weight every time you wake up and remember she's gone. Just peace." Marcus felt the pain in his chest trying to vanish, felt the memories unraveling, felt his daughter dissolving into mist, and he understood the true horror. To save Lily, to keep her real, to prevent her from becoming nothing, he would have to choose to suffer, not just today, forever. He would have to refuse healing, refuse peace, refuse every human instinct to escape pain. He would have to break himself on purpose over and over for the rest of his life. And the monster was already inside his head, eating, slowly, pulling pieces of Lily away with every passing second. Marcus made his choice. He closed his eyes and forced himself to remember the accident, not just the outline, not the sanitized version his mind had been creating to make it bearable, the real thing. Every detail. The sound of Lily's laugh as she pedaled faster, her joy at finally riding without training wheels, the pride on her face when she looked back at him, wanting him to see, wanting his approval. The car coming around the corner, too fast, the driver on his phone not looking up. The moment Marcus realized what was about to happen, the moment he started running, knowing he was too far away, knowing he wouldn't make it in time. The word no leaving his mouth, but taking too long, the sound too slow, physics and time conspiring to keep him from saving her. The impact, metal crumpling, her small body thrown, the bike twisted into something unrecognizable. The silence afterward, that terrible, infinite silence, and then the sounds that came after. His own screaming, neighbors running out of houses, someone calling 911, the distant wail of sirens. Holding her in the street, blood on his hands, her eyes open but seeing nothing, her chest still, her face peaceful as if she was sleeping, but wrong, fundamentally wrong, because she would never wake up. The hospital, the doctors with their careful, sympathetic voices, the decision to turn off machines that were keeping her technically alive, even though she was already gone. Choosing a casket, a tiny casket, something no parent should ever have to choose. The funeral, the way people avoided his eyes, the hollow condolences that meant nothing, the unbearable weight of dirt falling on wood, burying her, sealing her away from sunlight forever. The empty apartment, her room exactly as she'd left it, dolls on the shelf, books scattered on the floor, a drawing pinned to the wall, a stick figure family holding hands under a yellow sun. Every night since then, the guilt, the what-ifs, if he'd been watching closer, if he'd told her to stay in the yard, if he'd been faster, if he'd done anything differently. The crushing, suffocating, endless weight of loss. Marcus didn't just remember, he felt it, all of it, simultaneously, every moment of agony compressed into a single unbearable point. His mind became a singularity of grief, and it burned. The room screamed. Not with sound, with sensation. The walls convulsed, the flesh rippled and tore, the ceiling, that massive throat, contracted violently, trying to swallow, trying to digest, but choking instead. Dr. Calder collapsed, his form unraveling. The shadow creature flickered between shapes, human, monster, something in between. The void where his face should be split open, revealing more darkness, and inside that darkness Marcus saw all the memories it had consumed, writhing like worms. "You will break," the grief eater whispered, its voice fracturing into multiple tones. "No human can carry this. You will shatter." Marcus opened his eyes. Tears streamed down his face. Blood dripped from his nose. His hands shook violently. But Lily's face was clear in his mind, sharp, real, more vivid than it had been in weeks. "I already did," he said softly. The creature tried to feed. Marcus felt the pulling sensation, the fingers reaching into his chest, but the grief was too much, too concentrated, too raw. It was poison. Dr. Calder staggered backward, his form destabilizing further. The room pulsed erratically, the walls no longer breathing in rhythm. Something was breaking, not just the illusion, the thing itself. "You are destroying the balance," it said, and for the first time Marcus heard something like fear in its voice. I prevent collapse. I keep your species from drowning in accumulated pain. Without me, without you, we stay human," Marcus interrupted. His voice was steady despite the agony tearing through him. "We remember, we love, we hurt. That's what makes us real." The room's walls began to crack, not metaphorically. Actual fissures appeared in the flesh, revealing something beneath. Normal drywall, painted white, prosaic and ordinary. The illusion was failing. Dr. Calder's form grew more transparent with each passing second. "You cannot carry this forever." "I don't need forever." Marcus forced himself to stand, his legs shaking. "Just long enough." The creature revealed its final truth. Images flooded Marcus's mind again, but different now. Not manipulation, explanation. He saw the bigger picture. Grief eaters weren't unique. There were others like Dr. Calder scattered across the world, across history. They emerged wherever and whenever emotional accumulation threatened psychological collapse. They were natural predators in the ecosystem of consciousness, arising from the collective unconscious like antibodies fighting an infection. Because humanity's grief was accumulating. Trauma stacking across generations, war, famine, disease, personal loss, all of it building up, inherited biologically and psychologically, passing from parents to children to grandchildren. The human mind wasn't designed to carry infinite loss. Eventually, the weight would become unbearable. Without release, without something to consume the excess, people would break. Societies would fracture. Civilization itself would crumble under the weight of accumulated sorrow. The grief eaters weren't evil. They were necessary. A pressure valve, a way to prevent total collapse. But the cost was everything that made life worth living. "Why me?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Dr. Calder's form had solidified slightly, regaining some coherence. He looked almost human again, though his eyes remained that impossible black. "You loved deeply enough to poison me. Most people's grief is manageable, digestible. Yours is not. Your love for your daughter was so profound that losing her created a pain I cannot consume without being destroyed." Marcus understood then. The creature fed on normal grief, manageable loss, controlled, processable emotion. But Marcus's love for Lily was absolute, and when she died, the grief created was absolute also. A black hole that would collapse anything that tried to consume it. "You could save others," the creature said, "if you let me finish. If you let me take the last of your pain, you could become like them, functional, calm, free, and I could continue helping those who need it." Marcus looked at the thing wearing Dr. Calder's face and thought about Erin forgetting her daughter, Peter losing his son's name, all the parents who came here seeking relief and left as empty shells. "No," he said. The room shuddered. Marcus sat cross-legged in the center of the flesh room, closed his eyes, and remembered everything. Not selectively, not carefully managing which memories were safe to recall. He opened himself completely, let every moment of Lily's life flood through him simultaneously. Her birth, 23 hours of labor, Marcus holding her for the first time, this tiny red-faced creature who screamed with such surprising volume. The overwhelming terror of being responsible for something so fragile. Her first word, Dada. He'd been changing her diaper when she said it, and he'd cried with joy. Her first steps, wobbling across the living room into his waiting arms, the way she'd caught for herself afterwards, so proud. Every birthday, every Halloween costume, every Christmas morning. teaching her to ride a bike, to tie her shoes, to read, bedtime stories, scraped knees, thunderstorms when she'd crawl into his bed seeking safety, lazy Sunday mornings, trips to the zoo, ice cream melting down her chin on summer afternoons, the ordinary moments. Her voice calling from another room, her hand in his when they crossed streets, her artwork on the refrigerator, her questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars go during the day? What happens when we die? Every moment of joy, and every moment since the accident, the grief, the guilt, the nightmares, the empty space at the dinner table, walking past her room and forgetting she wasn't there, calling her name, remembering mid-word that she wouldn't answer, the sound of children laughing in playgrounds, that spike of irrational jealousy toward parents whose children were still alive. Marcus felt it all, held it all, let it consume him. His mind wasn't designed for this. No human mind was. The pain was too great. He felt something inside himself breaking, fragmenting under the weight. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. His heart hammered irregularly. His breath came in ragged gasps. But he didn't stop. The room collapsed. The walls ruptured completely, flesh peeling away like wet paper. The chairs dissolved, the floor cracked. Reality reasserted itself. Just a normal therapy room, white walls and gray carpet, and ordinary chairs arranged in a circle. Dr. Calder fell to his knees, his form unraveling completely. The void of his face split open, and memories came pouring out. Thousands of them, decades worth, maybe centuries. Children's faces, parents' tears, all the grief he'd consumed suddenly released. The creature was dying, dissolving, becoming nothing. "You will break," it whispered one last time, its voice fading. "You cannot survive this." Marcus opened his eyes. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his vision was blurred, his hands trembling uncontrollably, but Lily's face was clear. Her voice echoed in his mind, her presence filled him completely. "I already broke," he said. "This is what's left." The creature dissolved into smoke, into shadow, into nothing. The sweet rotting smell dissipated, the air became normal again, temperature controlled, sterile, empty. Dr. Calder's body remained, but it was just a body now, empty. The thing that had worn it like a suit had finally, completely gone. The memories returned. Not gradually, all at once. Across the city, across the country, around the world, every person the grief eater had fed upon suddenly remembered. Aaron collapsed in the middle of a grocery store, sobbing, Sophie's face suddenly vivid in her mind after weeks of emptiness. She remembered her daughter, remembered loving her, remembered losing her. The full weight of grief slammed into her like a freight train, and she crumpled in the produce aisle, security guards rushing over, not understanding why this woman was screaming a name over and over. Peter woke up at 3 a.m. with Tommy's face burning in his mind. Every detail, every memory, the dinosaur toys, the dreams of becoming a paleontologist, the hospital room, the moment the machine stopped beeping, it all came back, and he wept until he couldn't breathe, clawing at his chest as if he could physically remove the pain. Michael, who'd remarried, suddenly remembered his first son, remembered loving him, remembered the pool, the accident, the funeral. He sat up in bed next to his new wife and started crying, and when she asked what was wrong, he couldn't explain. How do you tell someone you'd forgotten your own child existed? Around the world, parents remembered, and the grief, suppressed for so long, came back with compound interest. Emergency rooms filled with people having what looked like psychological breaks. Therapists were overwhelmed. Suicide hotlines lit up. Within 48 hours, news reports began circulating about an unexplained epidemic of sudden-onset severe depression. Marcus watched it on the news from his hospital bed. He'd been found in the therapy room, unconscious, bleeding from multiple orifices. The doctors said he'd had some kind of severe psychological episode combined with a physical collapse. They'd never seen anything quite like it. His heart had stopped twice in the ambulance. His brain scans showed unusual activity, patterns they couldn't explain. They said it was a miracle he'd survived. Marcus knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was choice. He'd chosen to carry the unbearable weight, and somehow his body had refused to let him die as long as Lily remained vivid in his mind. The world didn't become better after the grief eater's death. It became real again. Suicide rates rose, depression diagnoses skyrocketed, productivity dropped as people struggled with emotions they'd forgotten how to process. The news called it a crisis, a pandemic of pain. But other things rose too. Art, music, poetry, all the creative works that come from suffering, from longing, from love deep enough to hurt. People started volunteering more, helping each other more because they remembered what loss felt like and didn't want others to face it alone. Parents held their children closer, treasured moments they would have taken for granted. Humanity became fragile again, vulnerable, capable of being hurt, but also capable of real connection, real love, real meaning. Marcus was discharged from the hospital after 2 weeks. He went home to his apartment, which looked exactly as he'd left it, Lily's things still scattered across the floor, photographs pinned to every wall. His sister had wanted to clean up, to put things away, to make the space less painful to exist in. He'd asked her not to. He needed the reminders. Every morning, Marcus woke up, and the first thing he did was remember. He forced himself to recall Lily's face, her voice, her laugh. He looked at photographs, watched old videos, read her crayon drawings. It hurt. Every single day, it hurt. The crushing weight in his chest never really lessened. The grief was as sharp as it had been the day she died. He cried often, had nightmares constantly, struggled to function at a basic level. But she remained real, vivid, present, his. Other parents from the support group reached out. They'd heard what happened, something about Marcus, though no one understood exactly what. They asked if he'd found some way to cope, some method that worked. He told them the truth. He hadn't. He'd simply chosen to stop running from the pain, to accept that this was his life now, to carry Lily with him in the only way possible, through suffering. Some understood, most didn't. A few tried his approach and couldn't sustain it. The pain was too much. They sought new therapists, new methods, new ways to manage the unbearable weight. Marcus didn't judge them. Everyone survived differently, but he'd made his choice. 6 months after the grief eater's death, Marcus visited Lily's grave for the first time since the funeral. He'd avoided it before, couldn't bear the reality of her being in the ground, sealed away in a box, reduced to nothing but bones and decay. The physical reality of death felt too final, too brutal. But now he stood in front of the headstone, pink granite, her favorite color, with a small engraved teddy bear. Lily Ann Webb, beloved daughter, 2018 to 2025, our little astronaut. Marcus knelt in the grass and talked to her, not metaphorically, actually talked, his voice quiet, telling her about his day, about the birds he'd seen that morning, about a funny thing his sister had said, about how much he missed her, how wrong the world felt without her in it. He cried, let the tears fall onto the grass without trying to stop them. And when he stood up an hour later, Lily's face was still clear in his mind, her voice still echoed. She remained real, carried in his pain like a treasure locked in a vault of suffering. A reporter had contacted him a week earlier, wanted to interview him about what happened, about the mysterious psychological event that had affected so many people. Marcus had declined, but the reporter had asked one question before hanging up. Do you regret it, destroying whatever was helping people heal? Marcus looked at Lily's photograph on the wall, her last birthday, chocolate cake, gap-toothed smile, and answered without hesitation, no. But people are suffering now, the suicide rate. People were already dead. They'd just forgotten they were dead. At least now they're alive enough to feel it. Three years later, Marcus still lived in the same apartment, still kept Lily's things exactly where they'd been, still woke up every morning and forced himself to remember, to feel, to hurt. He'd become something unusual, a man who refused to let grief fade. Other parents who'd lost children began seeking him out, asking how he did it, how he kept memories vivid when everything in the human brain wanted to dull the pain. He told them about the choice, about actively reopening wounds, about treating grief not as something to overcome, but as something to preserve, because it was proof that love had existed. Some people thought he was crazy, unhealthy, self-destructive. They were probably right, but Lily remained, clear and sharp and real. He never remarried, never tried to move on or start a new chapter. His life had been divided permanently into before and after, and he lived entirely in the after, carrying the before with him like a cross. At night, when sleep wouldn't come, he wondered about the grief eaters. Dr. Calder had said there were others, implied that they were natural phenomena, arising wherever grief accumulated past some critical threshold. Marcus wondered if he'd really killed the thing or just driven it away, if somewhere else in the world another grief eater was setting up practice, offering relief to desperate parents, hollowing them out with compassion. He wondered if humanity would eventually create more of them, if the weight of accumulated suffering would summon new entities to consume it. But he also remembered the art, the music, the renewed human connection that had emerged in the aftermath. He remembered parents holding their children closer, people treating each other more gently, the world becoming more fragile but also more alive. Pain was the proof that love existed, and forgetting was the only real death. On a Tuesday evening in late autumn, Marcus received an email. The subject line read, "Support Group, new session starting." He opened it out of curiosity, expecting spam or some automated message from an old mailing list. Instead, he found an invitation. "Dear Marcus, we understand you've experienced profound loss. We offer a new approach to grief counseling, one that honors memory while providing genuine relief. Our methods are different, effective, permanent. First session, Thursday, 7 p.m. Location, 445 Medical Plaza Drive, Suite 600. Below that, a name, Dr. Evelyn Thorne, specialist in bereavement and trauma." Marcus stared at the screen. The same building, different floor, different name, but the same promise: relief, healing, freedom from suffering. He looked at Lily's photograph on his desk. Her face was still clear in his mind. Her voice still echoed when he needed it. 3 years of choosing pain over forgetting, and she remained vivid. But he was tired, so desperately, endlessly tired. The weight never lessened. Every day was a struggle. Every morning required conscious effort to keep reopening wounds that wanted to heal. Marcus read the email again. Then he deleted it. Not because he wasn't tempted, he was. Every day he was tempted to stop hurting, to let go, to accept peace. But he'd learned something in 3 years of deliberate suffering. Grief wasn't a disease. It was love that had nowhere to go. And the only way to kill grief was to kill the love that created it. So Marcus chose to suffer again, as he would choose every day for the rest of his life, because somewhere in the world more grief eaters were emerging. They always would. As long as humans loved and lost, something would arise to consume what remained. But as long as one person chose to remember, to carry pain deliberately, to refuse the comfort of forgetting, they would never fully succeed. Marcus opened a new document on his computer and began typing. A letter, a warning, a guide for other parents who might receive similar invitations. To anyone who has lost a child, there will come a time when you're offered relief, genuine, permanent relief from the unbearable weight of grief. Someone will promise to take your pain away. Don't let them, because pain is the only proof that love existed. Memory without emotion is just data, and if you forget how much it hurt to lose them, you will eventually forget them entirely. I'm not telling you to suffer alone. Reach out, connect, let others help carry the weight, but don't let anyone take it away completely, because the last thing you ever forget is the one thing that made you human, the thing that kept you real, the person you loved. Marcus finished typing, saved the document, and emailed it to every grief support group he could find online. Then he went to bed. Tomorrow he would wake up and remember Lily, force himself to feel the full weight of losing her, and the day after that he would do it again, forever, because she deserved to be remembered, and he deserved to hurt.